I'm Blair Best. It's Wednesday here on The Story, and tonight, an update on that Everyone is Welcome Here classroom poster controversy in Idaho. The Attorney General there weighing in as a new state law just took effect. Plus, we're learning more about those 600 plus ODOT employees set to be laid off. We're hearing from an ODOT worker tonight and when those layoffs are expected to start. But first, remember ranked choice voting? Portland tried it out for the first time last fall, and at the time, there was a whole host of concerns. But a new study says the method worked as intended, and it's our big story tonight. The analysis was done by Cornell University at the Data and Democracy Lab there. They do a lot of research on elections and gathered data from last fall's Portland City Council election. They looked specifically at the election for councilors rather than the mayor or the city auditor, because to elect council, we used a system called single transferrable vote to elect 3 winners per district instead of just 1. In the report, the researchers wrote, overall, we find that STV, single transferable vote, delivered strikingly well on its promise of better proportionality for the voters of Portland. So first, let's look at voter turnout. There was concern that lots of people would skip voting for councilors because it was too confusing with all the different bubbles and rankings to fill in. The researchers found that was not the case. They compared turnout with past presidential election years and found that there was not a huge difference. They compared the number of people who voted for president and the number of people who voted for city council. The difference is called the roll-off rate. We're looking at those numbers highlighted. Fewer people voted for city council compared to the 2020 election, about 81% of presidential voters in 2024 compared to 87% in 2020. But more than during the 2016 election, when 78% of people voted for both city council and president.
So down here we have the rate of roll-off for the 2024 city council election. And as you can see, it's actually squarely between the roll-off rates from the 2016 and 2020 presidential race. So what this is telling us is that just because we changed in Portland from plurality elections to ranked choice elections doesn't mean that people were any more or less likely to participate in the election. Just switching the method didn't scare away voters. People still wanted to express their preferences here.
But another concern we heard a lot, again, was that the ballot was too confusing. You had, in some districts, up to 30 different candidates, and you got to choose your top 6 and rank them in order of preference. The researchers looked at what they called ballot spoilage, ballots that had so many mistakes when they were filled out that the votes didn't go anywhere.
And here we can just see some stats from the different districts. Districts 2 through 4 all behave about the same, but District 1 does have a significantly high spoiler rate, overvote rate, etc. So, this is something to keep an eye on, but from all other comparisons to all other major cities, as ranked choice voting elections continue to be run, voter error, which I'll put in quotes, goes down. So through education and through experience, people become more familiar with the ballot style.
The researchers found that for the most part, people understood that you get to rank 6 candidates, even though only 3 will get elected. In fact, most people chose their top 6, the bars on the far right there, instead of stopping at 3 or some other number. Now, aside from voter confusion, one more thing people worried about was the threshold to elect councilors. Because there are 3 seats per district, each councilor only needs to get 25% of the votes, plus 1 more, known as 25 plus 1. There was a lot of fear that so few votes would allow extremists to be elected, or that someone with little support in their district would win a seat. The data shows that was not really the case. Researchers found voters tended to choose candidates who all had similar views. So when 1 or 2 of them failed to meet the threshold and got eliminated, their votes went to a candidate that was similar, boosting them toward that 25 plus 1 threshold. Now, despite how crazy this graphic here looks, it's interesting how it works out. For most more progressive voters, if their top candidate was eliminated, their vote would then boost other progressive candidates. But your more moderate neighbors boosted the more moderate candidates. You can see that in green on this table here for the District 1 election. That's East Portland. Candace Avalos, Steph Routh, and Jamie Dunphy shared a lot of the same voters. You can see that in the dark green. Avalos and Dunphy ended up winning seats, but Loretta Smith, who won the third seat, had a lot of different voters. You can see she doesn't have any green by her name. She's represented in purple on this grid. It's confusing, I know, but stick with us. To better explain that, let's jump to District 4, downtown Portland, where two moderate candidates and one progressive were elected. Listen to how researchers showed it playing out. The moderate candidates are in blue and the progressive ones are in green.
When Weinstein here goes away, look at where his support goes. And ask yourself, is he more like blue team or more like green team? Well, when he's eliminated, his support goes here. And so you can see it's going a lot more to blue team. So he's better aligned with that business slate than he is with the rest. But then all of these Team Green people, they're keeping their votes kind of within that slate. And that's what finally puts Mitch Green over the line. So we thought this was incredibly important to communicate to people about the virtues of STV, or you could call it a feature, or you could call it a bug. It depends on your values and what you're after. But if you think about groups of voters with similar preferences, STV won't let one block sweep the winner set. It will share power between groups of candidates that have different support because your vote transfers down to someone else in your block after your top candidate is eliminated. We think that's a pretty strong case in favor of STV.
The researchers found that nearly everyone ranked at least one candidate who either won a seat or barely missed, coming in fourth place. The rate of ballot futility, where no one ranked on your ballot was elected or came in fourth, was about 2% citywide. So talk to us. What are your thoughts on ranked choice voting? Do you like it? Why or why not? Email us, thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Well, turning now to an update on the 600 plus ODOT employees that are expected to be laid off in the near future. Emails that you see here sent to ODOT staff and shared with the story team today give us a closer look at what positions are being cut, the timeline, and the consequences of those reductions, what this could mean for your community. Now, this comes after the state legislature failed to pass a comprehensive transportation funding package last week, and then failed in the 11th hour to fund an emergency bill to avoid some of these cuts. Lawmakers then ended the session 2 days earlier than they needed to. Can't miss a summer weekend, I guess. Well, now ODOT faces a more than $300 million shortfall over the next 2 years and legally cannot use federal or transit money for maintenance or agency operations. So, without help from the state, which would have to come in the form of a special session, which the governor has hinted at but not called for, ODOT management says 600 to 700 current employees will be let go. It would be one of the largest, if not the largest, state layoff in Oregon history, and would represent a reduction of nearly 10% of ODOT's workforce. The agency's director, Chris Strickler, wrote in an email to ODOT staff over the weekend, "This is the hardest message I've ever had to send in my career. I know this is shocking, scary, and frustrating for every single one of you. It is for me too. This reduction is short-sighted and fails to account for the cost of inaction. It's sure to cost the state more in the long run as our assets deteriorate." He went on saying, and that doesn't even account for the immense cost of losing the valuable, irreplaceable knowledge that resides in the ODOT people who have dedicated years, sometimes decades, of their lives to making our agency and transportation system safe and reliable. There's a statement. But it's inevitable, he says. It's the inevitable consequence of our funding situation. I'm sorry that it came to this. So we're told the agency is focusing on getting rid of as many vacant positions and non-personnel spending first. But the 600 plus current employees will have to be let go to balance the budget. We're told those employees will hear from managers in the coming days and receive a formal letter next week. Those affected will remain employed through the end of July. An ODOT spokesperson tells me they hope to have a clearer picture of the consequences of these reductions by next week. For now, they say this will almost certainly mean ODOT will fix fewer potholes, remove less graffiti, and clear less trash. That also includes fewer homeless camp removals from ODOT property, especially here in Portland. For the past 2 years, ODOT has sent the city $4 million a year to help clear camps on ODOT property within city limits. Think of all those tents you see along the interstate. Well, this week, ODOT canceled that agreement, citing funding constraints. They did say that camp cleanup on ODOT property will continue statewide, but not as often. Portland Mayor Keith Wilson tells me tonight, I am deeply alarmed that our intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation has been allowed to lapse due to the failure of the transportation bill. We now face immediate and unacceptable cuts to vital cleanup and camp removal efforts. Going on saying the compounding impact of this service disruption will be more trash, more hazards, and more danger to both our unhoused and all those who rely on our critical transportation corridors. Now, I just got off a virtual news conference with one of the unions that represents more than 1,700 ODOT employees. A current ODOT employee was also there. And this is the first time we're hearing from an ODOT worker in the midst of all this uncertainty.
Everybody is nervous. Really, no one's safe. Management's not safe on here, and us on a crew level, we're not sure because depending on your seniority, where you're going to fall at. There could be a person from another crew with 25 years. He's going to come and probably be able to bump a lot of other people. So everybody right now is nervous.
Okay, what he means there about bumping others, ODOT employees represented by a union like SEIU may be able to stay at the agency, but work in a different position.
In our contract, depending on how long you've worked and where you work, you may be able to stay at ODOT. If your position is slated to be eliminated, but another position that you also could do in the same region is not slated to be eliminated, you could have that position. That doesn't mean it reduces the number of layoffs necessarily. It may be that someone else then would be in a position and then maybe someone else. So it's a complicated process, but it does make sure that people who have been doing the job the longest, who have the most experience, potentially could not lose their job, but it does have impacts in other ways, and it doesn't necessarily mean less job loss.
Yeah, so for example, on my crew, we could have someone in a shop next to us, say they close that crew down. Those people with a lot of seniority could choose to come to my shop and bump people that they have more seniority, more tenure than. So the people with the less seniority on my crew are going to be nervous if they shut down a shop close to us.
Again, if Governor Kotek calls lawmakers back for a special session to do something about transportation funding, some of these layoffs could be avoided. But for now, the agency is preparing to lose hundreds of employees in just a matter of weeks. Well, Oregon adults with disabilities now have better access to mental health services, thanks to a new law. It fixes a system that frequently siloed people with intellectual or developmental disabilities away from mental health care. That's people like Alex Tennyson. He and his dad, Larry, were frustrated after they kept getting steered away from the mental health care that Alex needed, simply because he has autism. A state lawmaker shared her family's experience with the same problem. And as Evan Watson reports, the solution has finally arrived.
Alex, you remember last time we went to the hospital and we sat there all day and nothing happened last June?
Yeah, Dad.
It's a good thing it'll never happen again, right?
Right.
Okay.
Meet Alex Tennyson. He's an Oregon adult with autism. He works in a recycling center, has brilliant memorization skills, and he loves video games. But his dad, Larry, knows there's more. Alex has a history of mental health challenges. KGW first talked with the Tennysons about them a year ago.
He hears train whistles from when he's a kid. What do you think? What do you think when that happens?
That makes me scared.
Yeah.
And when the incessant noises start, Alex has flipped a switch.
How'd you get that knot up there?
Because.
You hit your head to try and make it stop?
Yes.
Doctors previously told the Tennysons that people like Alex don't make good patients for mental health care.
And that's what we ran into before, is we kind of got nothing. We kind of got shut it off. So now I don't think that's going to be an issue, hopefully.
This session, Oregon lawmakers unanimously passed a bill that says people with intellectual or developmental disabilities cannot be denied access to mental health assessment, treatment, or services.
It's not appropriate for a person having a psychotic break to walk into an emergency room and be told, we don't do people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And that happens. It's happened to a family member of mine. It's happened to many, many people.
Senator Sarah Gelser-Bluin and the bill's other sponsors said legal loopholes allowed public agencies to deny services, and people with disabilities faced gaps in care and fragmented services for too long. Governor Kotek signed that bill into law.
For us and, Alex and myself, it means we can have confidence we go into an emergency situation or a place where we get medical care. We don't have to explain anything about IDD or DD or autism. Theoretically, we can just say, those are his issues, but expect to get the same type of treatment we would if he didn't have those issues.
Larry Tennyson calls it a win for the community. Thankfully, Alex hasn't had as many issues in the last year following a change in support companies and medicines. The calloused knot on his forehead, hopefully a sign of the past.
And Alex, you're having a good day?
Yes, Evan.
A good day.
I'm having a good day.
Well, the Oregon Health Authority will likely send a memo to hospitals and healthcare providers explaining the new requirements and how to train providers to better care for people just like Alex. The law takes effect in September. Well, coming up next on the story, a new state law in Idaho hones in on the Everyone is Welcome Here classroom poster controversy that we've been following. What Idaho's Attorney General says about whether or not the sign violates the new law and what the teacher at the center of it all has to say. That's when the story returns. Well, a new law took effect in Idaho yesterday related to classroom displays in public schools. No doubt a response to the Everyone is Welcome Here classroom sign drama that we followed here on the story. House Bill 41 is meant to make sure there are no flags or banners put up in schools that promote political, ideological, or religious viewpoints in order to maintain a neutral and inclusive environment. Yes, the law says an inclusive environment. The irony is not lost on us, because earlier this year, a teacher named Sarah Inama was told to remove her Everyone is Welcome Here poster, saying it violated district policy. She refused to take it down and ended up resigning after the school year. But now there's this new law. There are no penalties for violating it, and enforcement is up to the Idaho Department of Education. Last week, that agency came up with guidance for how school districts should approach the law, laying out definitions, what can be displayed, things like that. The guidance was based on an opinion from the Idaho Attorney General's office and AG Raul Labrador. And when it comes to the Everyone is Welcome Here poster drama, the Department of Education wanted guidance from the AG on how this law would apply, writing, using West Ada as an example, would the 2 displays in Miss Inama's classroom be prohibited by the law? The AG's answer, yes, but the reasoning seems a bit off. Labrador's office said these signs are part of an ideological social movement which started in the Twin Cities, Minnesota, following the 2016 election of Donald Trump. It included a link to a story from our sister station in Minneapolis, focusing on 4 women who started making all are welcome signs in response to racist comments being written in a public school bathroom the day after Trump's election. The group ended up sending out more than 11,000 signs across 40 states. The final part of the AG's reasoning that the Everyone is Welcome Here sign violates the new law said Ms. Inama first displayed her sign in 2017 during the height of the above-referenced social movement. In media interviews, she explained she hung the sign to share her personal ideological beliefs. Now, as we reported, Sarah Inama said she had the sign up for about 4 years before her principal told her to take it down in February of this year. So, the 2017 reference in the AG's letter is flat out wrong. But what does Sarah Inama think about all of this? Brian Holmes has the update.
I think it's strange. I had to go and read the article.
Homes, businesses, and beyond, all are welcome here.
It happened to occur the day after a presidential election, but the things that were written and the signs that were made to combat it aren't political. So it's a strange article to cite as the beginning of this Everyone is Welcome Here movement.
So you had no idea about what was going on in Minnesota when you bought your poster?
No. And he also says...
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So also the opinion says you've had your poster up since 2017.
Yeah, no. I wasn't even a teacher in 2017. I was working as a nanny. I got hired full-time halfway through the school year, second semester in 2020. But yeah, it wasn't until 2020 or 2021 maybe that I had that sign.
In media interviews, she explained she hung the sign to share her personal ideological beliefs. What do you say to that?
It's pretty obvious that I do personally believe that all the students in my classroom are welcome, and no matter what, and they should know that. And so yes, it is also personal, but whether they want to admit it or not, that is the view of the school districts in this state. That is the view of the Department of Education in this state. That is the law according to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So inclusion and equality of the students in public education is not an opinion. And it's very clearly defined in laws in the federal government and in our state government.
You left the school district because you weren't feeling supported. Now this opinion comes out that says your poster, everyone is welcome here, would be a violation of the new law that goes into effect when it comes to flags in classrooms or banners. What do you think about that?
I will never be convinced that the message everyone is welcome here, or everyone is welcome, or all are welcome, whatever it may be, a message of inclusivity to the students in our classrooms is political at all in any sense. You can find a million things about that idea to inclusivity for everybody that lives in your community all over the place and in different parts of the world. It has nothing to do with our political parties here in the United States.
So in our last update, we told you that Ms. Inama left the West Ada School District where this controversy began. She now teaches in the Boise School District nearby. She says she's not heard from administrators in her new district about what this new law could mean for putting up her Everyone is Welcome Here poster in her new classroom. But the Department of Education included a complaint form in their guidance to school districts, meaning someone could complain about it and then it would be up for review. But again, there's no penalty with this law, meaning a teacher could be told to remove a poster that's considered to violate this new law and policy, and even if they refuse, there could not be any criminal repercussions. Stick with us. We're back right after this. Well, that is the end of our show, folks. Thanks so much for watching. The good stuff is coming your way next. And don't forget, everyone has a story to tell. A quick programming note for you. We will not have a show for you on Friday night because of the 4th of July holiday. But I hope to see you back with me tomorrow night at 6:30.